Imagine you're a Roman emperor. You rule lands where the sun sets in the east on one day and rises again over Ireland the next. Your armies march in sandals and ride horses bred in Arabia. Your laws are taught in Britain and your generals fight in Persia. It's the year 1453. After 1,000 years of conquest, upheaval, and restoration, you're down to the last sliver of your domain. Forget about Rome or Ravenna. Your whole empire fits in one city, Constantinople. Sure, there's the Anatolian provinces, but your capital sits on the Bosporus Strait, a single isthmus linking Europe and Asia. For centuries, this strategic advantage kept the heart of the Roman world safe. But now it's a curse. Outside the massive Theodosian walls, 80,000 Ottoman Turks are massing under Sultan Mehmed II. And his goal is simple: make himself Caesar. Now you can call him the Conqueror. Mehmed II had taken cities like Adrianople, Thessalonica, and Salimbria, opening a highway to Constantinople. Yet taking the city of Rome was always the goal. He inherited an ongoing siege. His father died in 1444, and the war continued under his regent mother. War with the crumbling Byzantine Empire was good politics. Constantinople was the jewel of the East, and rumor said it was ripe for the taking. With the help of Hungarian and Genoese mercenaries, Mama Hatun ordered the first assaults. They failed. The massive walls were intact, the citizens prepared, and the Romans repelled attack after attack. So Mehmed, barely 21 years old, took control. He knew how to win wars. He built siege towers, breaching ramps, battering rams. And then came the star of the show, the basilisk, a gigantic cannon almost 5 feet wide and 15 feet long. It shot solid iron balls weighing around 330 pounds. By contrast, cannons in Western Europe averaged a fifth of the weight. You'd think an attack on Rome would be all about spectacle. Cannons were just one part of the equation. Siege warfare was a test of endurance. The real attack was on supplies. Romanian food was low, the farms in the fields and fishing ships harbored. Constantina Poles had limited her campaigns to the Aegean. As winter dragged on, supplies grew scarce, morale dropped, and allies deserted the Byzantines. First came the French, then the Venetians, and finally, embarrassingly, the Genoese, who sailed right past the city to join the Ottomans. Now, Mehmed took over the siege in March 1453. He dug new trenches, assaulted the walls, and bombarded the city. All the while, scouts reported ship masts by the docks, military preparations and deliveries arriving daily. The Byzantines weren't giving up without a fight. The emperor, Constantine V of Palaiologos, had reigned for only 2 years, but he was determined to carve his own legacy in history. Like Caesar, Augustus, and Justinian, he planned to defend Rome against outside invaders. He trained new soldiers, repaired the walls, bolstered defenses, and rebuffed peace offers. Now, peace talks might have made sense. His forces numbered at most 7,000 men, fewer than half of the Ottomans. Moreover, the empire was exhausted. Its economy was devastated, and its treasury was empty. Despite his efforts, Constantine was getting nowhere. On May, his messenger approached Muhammad with a peace proposal, but the young sultan wasn't interested. As far as he was concerned, Constantinople would either submit or burn. That same day, a message arrived in the city, an ultimatum from the Ottomans. The deadline was tomorrow. Constantine called a meeting with his generals. They discussed strategy and debated the peace offer. In the end, they decided to reject it. Now, some stories say that a herald misread the terms, others that the emperor refused to accept them. But whatever the truth, the decision was made. They would fight. Now, neither the Romans nor the Ottomans believed they could break through the walls head-on. Instead, each side waited for the other to make the first move. Then, early in the morning on May, a cavalryman stationed at the gate spotted horsemen approaching. He sounded the alarm. Runners raced along the ramparts, yelling, "The Turks, they're coming!" The Byzantines braced for battle. Archers took their places, and heavy infantry grabbed their spears. At the time, no one knew that the initial force was just a diversion. Muhammad himself was preparing a much larger attack. His plan was simple. The cavalry would draw the Romans out. The infantry would follow. The next day, the curtain wall would come down. Sure enough, Roman knights surged forward and met the Turks outside the city walls. For 2 hours, they traded blows. The fighting was intense, but the Roman knights drove the Ottomans back. It seemed like the defense would hold. Then suddenly a trumpet blared, drums pounded, and the entire Ottoman army charged toward the walls. Seeing the vast numbers of enemy soldiers, the Roman knights fell back and retreated behind the safety of the Theodosian walls. Now, the outcome of the battle hung in the balance. If the Romans could hold, the Ottomans would have to withdraw. And maybe, just maybe, they could win. But Constantine needed to get reinforcements to the gates fast. So he called upon every able-bodied man, woman, and child to assist the defenders. They gathered at the waterfront to form a human chain. Each person carried a bucket filled with dirt, rocks, or water. The buckets were passed hand to hand to build a barricade against the advancing Turks. But as the citizens hurried to protect the outer walls, the Ottomans launched a surprise attack on the inner walls. A few minutes later, the shouts of "God is great" echoed through the streets of Constantinople. The Turks had breached the walls. Constantine rallied troops and civilians alike. Together, they fought to the death. Knights wielding swords dueled with Turkish janissaries. Soldiers fired hand cannons and archers loosed arrows. Civilians armed with pitchforks and clubs joined the fray. But it wasn't enough. The janissaries were well-trained and well-equipped. Their armor was superior, and their weapons were deadly. Slowly but surely, the Romans lost ground. And as the numbers of defenders dwindled, the Turks pressed their attack. As the sun set on May 29, 1453, the battle raged on, but the tide had turned. Meanwhile, Mehmed watched the assault on the inner walls from a distance. He didn't need to see the battle up close. The screams of combat were victory enough. His men battled across the city, breaking through defenses and killing or capturing those they encountered. Soon the sound of cannons, shouts, and screams filled the air. The Ottoman soldiers fought until every street was theirs. Now, where does history get messy? The tale of the fall of Constantinople has several versions. There are accounts from Ottoman historians, Western chronicles, and first-hand descriptions by those who fought there. All agree on the basics, but details vary wildly. Take the last emperor, Constantine. Was he a reluctant warrior or a fierce commander? Did he die in battle or escape to Italy? Most sources say he died valiantly, charging into the fray. But one Venetian account claims he fled to Rome dressed as a woman. Mehmed also gets different treatment depending on the source. For Western writers, he was the epitome of evil, a fanatic who cared nothing for life or treasure. For Muslim historians, he was a visionary leader destined to conquer Constantinople and usher in a new era for his people. Even the fate of the city itself is a matter of perspective. For the Ottomans, the capture of Constantinople marked the triumph of Islam over Christianity. For Western Europeans, it meant the loss of classical art, literature, and philosophy, not to mention silk, ivory, and spice trade routes. The truth is, Mehmed and Constantine both had their strengths and weaknesses. Both leaders were brilliant tacticians, but also prone to making terrible decisions. Both wanted to conquer new lands and expand their influence. Both were religiously devout, but also willing to use religion to further their goals. The fall of Constantinople wasn't just a clash of cultures, religions, and empires. It was a battle between two very human opponents. So let's talk about the aftermath. The Ottomans captured the city, plundered its riches, and enslaved or massacred its inhabitants. The spoils of war were immense. Muhammad took treasures from Hagia Sophia, including the altar of the Holy Apostles. He established an Ottoman dynasty in Constantinople, and the Ottomans quickly began work on a new mosque to replace Hagia Sophia. Yet Muhammad wasn't interested in total destruction. He recognized the importance of art. culture, and infrastructure and worked hard to preserve it. That's why he allowed churches and synagogues to stay open, why he employed many Byzantines in government, and why he turned the Hippodrome into a park. He saw himself as a successor to Rome, not its enemy. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of the Byzantine Empire, but it also signaled the beginning of a new era for Eastern Europe. It established Ottoman dominance in the region and set the stage for future conflicts between Europe and the Middle East. It spurred exploration and discovery as Europeans sought new trade routes to the east. It affected art, architecture, and culture, and it led to the exchange of ideas between civilizations. Maybe the death of the Roman Empire birthed a new world. Who knows? All we know is that it happened on May 29th, 1453.